5, the Honourable David Parker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of ACC. Does his recent admission that ACC has handled the issue of counselling for sexual abuse victims badly give him cause to question whether ACC has also treated victims of hearing loss badly?
The Honourable Dr. Nick
Mr
Smith.
Speaker, no, the issue of sensitive claims was about best clinical practice, and with the assistance of the independent clinical review supported by ACC has resulted in a good outcome. The issue over hearing loss is about policy and regulation and arises from a Cabinet decision last year that ACC should, as per its legislation, be responsible only for injury-related hearing loss and not for that caused by other factors such as age. In short, age is not an accident.
Honourable David Parker.
Does the Minister still assert that he had no responsibility nor blame properly attached to him for the mistakes made in relation to the withdrawal of ACC counselling for victims of sexual crimes? And if so, why do we bother with question time where he was repeatedly warned about his folly?
Mr Speaker,
the Honourable Dr. Nick
Mr
Smith.
Speaker, of course I'm responsible. I'm the Minister of ACC. But what I have said, and the response that I made to the issues that were raised, was to seek an independent clinical review. Where members opposite have been misleading, if they have asserted that decisions were made by either myself or ministers with respect to sensitive claims when they were made by clinicians.
The Honourable David Parker.
Given the Minister's earlier assertions that he relies on expert advice, why has he ignored the evidence from Professor Thorne and Dr Welch of the Department of Audiology at the University of Auckland, who have said, and I quote, "The introduction of a percentage handicap threshold for noise-induced hearing loss appears to be a reaction to the cost of claims and is apparently not based on an understanding of the real noise-induced hearing loss situation in New Zealand."
Mr Speaker, the members making reference to the ACC amendment bill that introduced the 6% threshold, a decision that was made finally by the Parliament, but with my strong support as the Minister. I would note that every workers' compensation scheme in Australia has a threshold. They have a threshold. Well, members opposite say that we're in New Zealand. Yes, we are. But I also have to say that as a consequence of the multi-billion-dollar losses that the previous government passed on to us in the area of ACC, we've had to be very careful about ensuring cost-effectiveness of ACC's expenditure.
Michael Woodhouse.
Supplementary to the Minister. What discussion the Minister had with his colleague, the Minister of Health, to ensure that its systems properly respond to any changes to ensure that people are able to secure health support for any age-related hearing loss?
The
Mr.
Honourable
Speaker,
Dr. Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I've had very close discussions with the Minister of Health, and officials from our respective agencies have been working closely together. The current rules are that if any support is provided by ACC for hearing loss, the claimant is ineligible for any support from the Ministry of Health. This has led people in the sector to assume a lack of any support from health where a person has hearing loss from both industry or industrial hearing loss as well as that from age-related hearing loss. The government is working through the options, is considering the submissions that have been made, and we are confident that we can come to an answer between ACC and health that will be fair and will work for those that require hearing assistance.
The Honourable David Parker.
Has the Minister seen the latest issue of the National Foundation for the Deaf magazine containing reports about people his decisions are impacting, like Les Slattery, who is reported to have repaired chainsaws in the 1970s without earmuffs, and if it were not for that job would not need hearing aids, but now at age 72 faces cuts to his ACC cover for his work-related hearing loss?
The Honourable
Speaker,
Dr. Nick Smith.
Let me make an issue absolutely plain, and that is that ACC will meet its full obligations for hearing loss that has occurred as a consequence of industrial hearing loss. We've made that absolutely plain. As I've said, I'm working closely with the Minister of Health to ensure that where a person has a mix of both industrial and age-related hearing loss, that the total package is one that works well for New Zealanders.
Michael Woodhouse.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, can the Minister confirm the facts of the audited accounts of ACC that show losses of $7.2 billion in 2007 and 8? And if so, has he received any calls for a full and independent inquiry into these losses?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, yes. The audited ACC accounts show a loss of $2.4 billion in 2007-8 and $4.8 billion in 2008-9. This total of $7.2 billion exceeds that of the expected losses from all the 61 failed finance companies. The cost of ACC's loss to the public purse exceeds by a factor of 10 the cost of the deposit guarantee scheme. I have not received any calls for a full public inquiry from the opposition into these losses, although I would note the inquiry into the failure to disclose the losses in the non-earners account was a breach of the Public Finance Act.
Don't talk about that.
The Honourable David Parker.
Why wouldn't older New Zealanders see his refusal to provide proper ACC cover for work-related hearing loss as just a part of National's campaign to target elderly for cost-cutting, with other examples being cuts to home support, the falls prevention program and orthopaedic operations for older workers who have suffered shoulder injuries?
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, this government is very committed to providing proper support for older New Zealanders. I think the changes that will come into effect on the 1st of October, for instance, where the average superannuitant will be significantly better off with those tax changes on the 1st of October. You need only look at the biggest ever increase in elective surgery that my colleague Tony Ryle has delivered. Need only look at the very good work that my colleague John Carter is doing as the Minister of Senior Citizens to realise that older New Zealanders are so much better off with the leadership from this government.
Question number 6, Chester Borrows.